Welcome, everybody. Tuesday, June 25th. John Aravosis here. Hello, YouTubers. It is Tuesday, June 25th. My camera's good enough. Let me get TikTok rolling. Introduce yourselves. I see you've already started. Hello, Bjorn and WC. Let me get going here. All right, here we go on TikTok. And then, as always, we'll say hi for a minute and then wait for everybody to arrive. Our TikTokers are joining us now. Mirror my video. Boom. There we go. Hello, all. A syndicate. Any news? Just asking. Hey, my dog's licking my leg and driving me crazy. Hey, TikTokers. Manda on multiple sites just to freak me out. Hey, Alan, thank you for the gift. Oh, welcome, guys. Okay, okie dokie. So how are we doing, folks? Thank you, Succeed, for the gift. Thank you, everybody. Welcome all. Today is Tuesday, June 25th. Hope everybody's doing well. Oops. Getting a message from my friend Ryan in Canada. Hey, Larissa. Thank you there. Gothenburg, Sweden. I think I've been to Gothenburg. I keep forgetting. I've been to I think it's Gothenburg, the university town, sort of southwestern Sweden. Right on the water there, but like on the west coast of Sweden, but in the south. University town. I think it's Gothenburg. Pretty sure. I have to look on the map, but I think so. Hey, John. Hey, Jonathan. Thank you guys for the gifts. Anyway, woo! Just check my private messages on TikTok. Excellent. A Discord. Anyway, welcome, guys. How are we doing? Sibling reunion for Mama. Nice. Anyway, hey, guys. Welcome all. I am John Aravosis. This is my show. This is the show where we talk about the latest news from Ukraine. We also get into other political news sometimes when it's relevant. I always forget that on TikTok that my shirt shows up larger than the screen. For me on the screen, it shows my shirt stopping here. But I think Ashley or somebody sent me the picture to show me it's actually bigger. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Life. Thank you, Josh. Yes, this is my Uniqlo shirt that I got in Singapore. I'm sure they sell it elsewhere. Except that in Singapore, it's like $15. These shirts are a lot cheaper in Singapore. Uniqlo prices are very similar around the world, but some things are cheaper. And this shirt was a lot cheaper. Thank you, Marcy. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Stephen. It's a Keith Haring shirt from Uniqlo. Very pretty. I thought it was fun. And I like the color, which is fun. Thank you, Ruan, for your thank you. Greetings from Anchorage. Hey, Chazak. And thank you for the gift, Chazak. So anyway, welcome, everybody. I have my Ukrainian mug of water, nicely iced, as you can tell from the chill on the mug. A warm day with cold water. Thank you, Derek. It doesn't get more American than that. Ice cold water on a warm day. And a nice Ukraine mug. Ooh la la. We are not even close to doomsday, big boy Butler. I'm going to talk about that at the end of the show, but only briefly because Russia's making more threats. And honestly, nobody cares. Nobody cares. All right, guys. Anyway, welcome, everybody. I am John Aravosis. This is my show. This show where we cover the latest news from Ukraine. Basically, it's Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern time, U.S. That's Washington, D.C. or New York City time. You'll notice me look back and forth because I broadcast simultaneously to TikTok here on my iPad and YouTube here over on my laptop computer. So you'll see me and actually, like the YouTubers, you'll often see me looking down because I'm reading your comments. So on YouTube, whenever you see me doing this, I'm actually paying attention to you. It's not looking the wrong way. Anyway. Oh, boy. All right. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Sin. Hope all is well. Yeah. So, Christopher, that's true. All right. You'll have to tell people what's up. I'm not going to tell people. You're going to have to tell people. Not my story to tell. Anyway, guys, welcome. My frosted mug of actually root beer. God, I love root beer. Root beer is an American phenomenon. Thank you, CJJ, for the rose. Now, what I don't know is, do the Brits drink root beer? I know the Europeans hate root beer. But I wasn't sure if the Brits drink it. Thank you, Ward. It's wonderful. Americans love it. Thank you, Charles, for the gift. Americans, well, I was just going to say, tastes like medicine. Fraser, Europeans or foreigners seem to think root beer tastes like medicine. It's the funniest damn thing. Canada does like it. That's where Canada gets the American connection. Yeah. It's the craziest thing. We grew up drinking it. Thank you, Christopher. Google it, Jens. I mean, nowadays root beer would be all artificial flavors or whatever, right? Originally, it was what kind of root, guys? Do you remember what the root was in root beer? I'm forgetting now. Like it was a funny name, funny American sounding plant name, like an Indian plant or something. What was the plant that root beer comes from? Thank you, Richard. Sassafras? Is it sassafras? Okay, sassafras. I remember it being something like traditional American. It is. You've got me like pining for it now that we're talking about it. It is funny if you're brought up with it as an American. It is the most delicious thing. If you're a foreigner, if you're not American and you try root beer, you will think it's disgusting. You'll think it tastes like medicine. It's the funniest damn thing. And I don't know why. Thank you, Ward. But for us, it is the most delicious thing. It's very funny. Yeah, it's just a very funny thing. Anyway. So, so welcome everybody. I love root beer. God, I love root beer. You can buy the real thing locally. Oh, that's interesting, Brian. I don't know that I've ever had like real root beer. A&W isn't real root beer, is it? Sarsaparilla, yeah. Is A&W real root beer? Anyway, root beer floats are great. All right, we'll stop talking about irrelevant stuff. Mustard gets upset when we talk about irrelevant stuff. Anyway, so welcome everybody. I am John Aravosis. We're going to talk about the latest news from Ukraine. The way it works has been... Okay, now I can say it because Syndicate said it. So Syndicate, our moderator, just had a baby. He and his wife, Michaela. Michaela and Syndicate met via the show. Syndicate's been a longtime moderator. Michaela is a moderator now. I don't remember if she started as a moderator. I don't remember if she started as a moderator or just a viewer, but nonetheless, Michaela and Syndicate met via the show. She moved to Europe to be with him. To live with him. Obviously, they just had a baby. Very exciting. So the baby's name is Christopher. She and the baby are still in the hospital because in Europe, I guess they don't kick you out. They don't kick you out an hour after you've given birth like they do in America. So yeah, very sweet. So our first, as Syndicate just said, our first Aravosis report baby has been born tonight. His name is Christopher, and both Mom Michaela and he are fine. Lovely. Anyway, very nice. Very nice. She started out later. That's what I thought, Syndicate. Yeah. Any case, you hope I'm the godfather? Only problem is I'm a little long distance to be like the only godfather. That's the only problem. Otherwise, that's very sweet. All right, let's keep moving, guys. All right, so let's move on with the show. You guys know how this works. It's a Christopher. It's a boy. I'm gonna use my gender bias and suggest that Christopher is a boy. So the way the show works, guys, is I will go through the news. At the second half of the show, take your comments, take your questions. I will hit you up a few times for gifts and things, because the gifts are very useful to me because I do this full time. Nobody pays me. Thank you, Martin. Also, there were a couple other gifts that popped up. Hang on here. I did see them when I was talking about Syndicate and the baby. Here it is. Steven and Mustard. You were the two that popped in. Exactly. A couple more now. Thank you, Mark, Christopher, Christine, Martin, Kano. So yes, I hit you guys up for gifts because I do this for free and I do it full time. And quite literally, this is my job. I've always done internet politics for decades now. And when the war started, I decided just to devote myself full time on trying to get the story about Ukraine, using my media background, my foreign policy background, my sort of political advocacy background to try to just basically be a propagandist for Ukraine. And I use the propagandist word in a good way. Thank you, Stephen, Adventures, and Vicky. Thank you, Boppo. Basically a marketing guy. So, all right. See, in Washington, we use the word propagandist and it sounds bad. A marketing guy. I'm a PR guy for Ukraine. We'll call it that. Public relations. Thank you, Doc. And thank you, Brian, for the gift, and Tarmo. All right. Let's get rolling. All right. Today is day 852 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation in Ukraine. Lot of stories today. The first one is Trump's advisors. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for the gift there. Trump's advisors came out and kind of floated a weird Ukraine peace plan, kind of, sort of, but not really. Thank you, Brian, for the tiny diny. Basically, Trump isn't really proposing a peace plan. He's proposing a plan to force Ukraine and Russia to negotiate. Thank you, Anki. Appreciate that. It's a little, what I don't like about this is I don't like things in politics that are basically puff. We just got done talking about PR. I don't like things that are only PR, that have no substance. Thank you, Martin, for the dancing flower. And what I mean by this is Trump has a new proposal, not for peace, a new proposal to force Ukraine and Russia to negotiate. Well, what the hell does that mean, right? So they both agree to negotiate, and then what happens? Nothing. I mean, I just don't understand the concept. It's honestly, it's meant to trick you all. Thank you, adventurers. It's meant to make you all go, aha, he has a peace plan to make them negotiate. No, a peace plan is not having the parties negotiate. That means nothing, right? It means nothing. In any case, so Trump's plan is to threaten the Russians that they'd better negotiate, or he's going to like triple aid to Ukraine. And his plan to Ukraine is they'd better negotiate, or he's going to cut off all aid to Ukraine. Well, okay, whatever. All both sides have to do is say, sure, we'll talk. That accomplishes nothing. Thank you, Anki. Oh, who did the whale? Blue Ariel. Thank you, Blue Ariel. We got the wave. We do the wave whenever we have a whale. Very cool whale gift on TikTok that comes flying out of the screen. And I believe makes whooshing noise too. Thank you, James. I can never tell because I've got my good mic plugged into the iPad, so I never can hear the noise. And thank you, Christian, for the rose. But I believe the whale makes like a whoosh. Syndicate just did 5 gift certificates on behalf of the baby, I'll say. Unnecessary Syndicate, because Syndicate does a ridiculous amount of work for us. Syndicates single-handedly created the Discord community, actually, among other great things. Thank you, Margaret. But let's see. Amanda, Jason, Karen, Sick, Flying Med, and John Piper. Not John Piper. Oh, never mind. Flying Med, all of you just got a month's gift membership for free. That means you can join the Saturday show for free. It's Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, U.S., where we hang out just for the paid subscribers. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Elizabeth. Just had somebody else there, I thought, maybe. And you get to have fun special emojis and crazy stuff, too. Oh, and actually, for YouTubers, you also get to bid in the VIP auctions on Discord. So you can ask the mods about that. All right. Let me keep going, guys. So Trump is proposing a plan to basically force Ukraine and Russia to negotiate. Doesn't really do anything. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Joyce. Part of his idea, though, is he's going to he wants to force Ukraine. Basically, Trump, by the way, in negotiations, we call this negotiating with yourself, right? Negotiating with yourself, where basically you start caving and giving stuff up in a negotiation before you're actually negotiating. So Trump has already said he would basically give up Ukrainian NATO membership for a long time if Russia agrees to negotiate. Well, why in God's name, thank you, Jen Thomas, why in God's name would we give up Ukraine's right to join NATO in exchange for nothing, just for an exchange for Russia to talk? That's stupid, right? Thank you, Clink, for the donut, and Jen Thomas. It's just whatever. So that's stupid. Secondly, good luck deterring Russia from a future war with Ukraine if Ukraine doesn't join NATO. I've said this before. Unless we've got NATO troops all over Ukraine, we are never going to have peace in Ukraine, because the Russians are just going to come back. They're going to come back in 3 years. They're going to come back in 5 years. So in any case, I think it's a little bit early for NATO to be saying, oh, NATO membership is off the table for Ukraine. First of all, Russia should be terrified, right? Should be terrified about Ukraine joining NATO. We should be going to Russia and saying, you know what? Ukraine is going to join NATO unless you do massive concessions. Thank you, Tracy, for the gift. What are you going to give us, Russia, in exchange for Ukraine not joining NATO is what I would say. But there's no way in hell I would say no. Yes, Dawn, Syndicate is a new daddy. Syndicate and Michaela. Yep. I don't want to repeat it all now, but he was over on Discord. He may have just left, but he just checked in. The baby's name is Christopher, doing very well. And they are still in the hospital because they're in Europe. And in Europe, we don't kick women and babies out of hospitals the hour after they're born, which is nice. Thank you, Shebug, unlike America. So yes, you're getting if he's still there, you're getting lots of congrats over on TikTok, Syndicate. That's okay, Riley. I typically don't get to, I will sort of look for questions, but I typically won't get to your guys' questions till the second half of the show, because the way the show works is I go and grab a bunch of interesting news that I think, Syndicate's still there. He says, thank you. All right. To the TikTokers. He's still over he's still over at Discord. So he got your well wishes. So yeah, I go through the news and I compile it, the news that I think is interesting and relevant for Ukraine. And then first half of the show, I tend to go over the news. Second half of the show, I take your questions. And sometimes I will see your questions in the first half, but it's kind of a mix of kind of reading the news, talking about it, and looking at your guys' questions. So I don't always see them in the first half. Just be aware if you're new here. That's the way it works. All right, let's keep going. Second point. So this is interesting, actually. Wife fell asleep. That's cute. Second point here. Actually, you must be in the hospital, Syndicate, because it's got to be what, 6 o'clock at night or midnight in the Netherlands, I'm guessing. Thank you, Devo. Thank you, Elizabeth, for the dancing flowers. So CNN reported today, very interesting. Thank you, Tracy. And thank you, Barry, that the Biden administration is moving towards lifting a ban on American military contractors deploying to Ukraine. Now, let me get into this a little. I heard this and initially kind of went, okay, what does that mean, right? And by the way, James Althouse, thank you for the gift. I did see it pop up. I think it popped up at the same time as Syndicate subscription, so I lost track of it. Thank you for that. Thank you, Hannah, for the gift. I think I got Barry and Tracy too. So I heard this about the Biden administration today, and at first I went, what do you mean military contractors? We've got like private military people volunteering in Ukraine. What do you mean? What they're talking about is Biden is, I will say this, Biden clearly is getting ready to do this. This article being leaked is on purpose, I think. This article being leaked is probably a trial balloon. A trial balloon in marketing or politics means you make something public with plausible deniability. Adjusting my light a little here. Which means you make something public like this, where Biden's people say, oh, we're thinking of letting Ukraine use American military contractors. But you're not the one putting it public. So that if there's a great outcry, Biden could go, I never said that. That was some staffer who said it. So it's called a trial balloon because you basically fly the balloon in the air and see how it does. Does the balloon get shot down, right? So that's what's going on. So it looks like Biden's going to do this. What is interesting is what they're talking about is the U.S. government hiring private military contractors, so private military companies, to go to Ukraine to help, among other things, do repairs of equipment, specifically F-16s, which I thought that was very smart. Maintaining the F-16s, maybe even maintaining the airfields, I don't know, but maintaining the jets themselves, which is great. Second thing these guys and gals could do, currently, a lot of the American military equipment, maybe the European too, when it gets damaged, like, I don't know, Abrams tank or personnel carrier or whatever, when it gets damaged, we send the vehicle away to Romania or Poland to get fixed, and then it has to come all the way back to Ukraine. In this case, you would have American military contractors in Ukraine who would literally be there to fix the vehicles on the spot, which would be great. Thank you, Denise, for the Community Fest gift. So I think this is great news. It's kind of funny, actually, because to some degree, some of the people on TikTok rightfully were saying, American military contractors have kind of a mixed bag reputation in the public eye, certainly on the left, because we think of Iraq and Blackwater and some of these guys that were a little out there for some of our taste. But overall, this is, I think, a good thing. I think it's interesting because I will say, typically, when you start hiring military contractors for a just fixing things role, that can creep. That can turn into other jobs too. Now, I mean, Allie just said, isn't this how we entered in Vietnam? My answer to that would be police use guns to kill bad guys. Bad guys use guns to kill police and each other. Just because a policy was used in one war in a bad way, maybe, doesn't mean it's used in another war in a bad way. There's nothing inherently wrong with military contractors. There's nothing inherently wrong with guns. There's nothing inherently wrong with war, frankly. You could pick a bad war and say, didn't we send troops to that war? Therefore, sending troops to war is bad, right? Thank you, Marie. It's not. So I would say, I don't really care if we used military contractors in Vietnam and that, bottom line, by the way, the Vietnam, if you really want to get into it, the actual analogy for Vietnam, which worries me, is Vietnam, we sent military contractors. Like Vietnam, as I recall, I studied it in graduate school. It's been a while. It's been a long while since graduate school. But we slowly ramped up, slowly in Vietnam. And basically, among other reasons we lost the war, we just kept going like this, right? And Ukraine sounds familiar, right? We did a little, then we did a little bit more. Then we sent them some HIMARS, but only a couple. But we didn't want to send Patriot missiles. We waited 9 months for them, and then we sent them 1 or 2. Right? It was but we didn't want to send planes and we didn't want to send tanks. And then we sent them a few tanks and then maybe planes, but it's still been 2.5 years and there's no planes, right? La, 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 right? And that's it. Now, by the way, since we've got a troll here who's about to leave, Ash, that half African person's leaving because they're really a troll. But you know how much I love to respond to troll lies when there's such good truths to go after. The African troll, claiming to be African, could be an African troll. I think the Russians do hire a lot of African trolls. Said, You're sending young men to die for this war. Literally, no American men are dying for this war, or women, because the Ukrainians are fighting it for us. That's the beauty of this war. Thank you, Martin. My tax dollars are going to destroy the Russian military, and I don't have to risk a single American life. That's how beautiful this war is. Absolutely, Ukrainian lives are being risked. It's a horrible thing. Ukrainians are, frankly, thank you, Bryce, thank you, Martin, happy to, I don't want to say give their lives, but happy to risk their lives to save their country. And they are happy to accept our help in the same way that if you were walking late at night, walking home, and some guy jumped you, and some stranger on the corner saw and jumped in to help you, you would be very glad that stranger jumped in to help you. You wouldn't say, sending your men in to save the woman. Yeah, we are sending our men in to save the woman in that case. Same thing here. In this case, though, we don't have to risk ourselves to save the Ukrainians. All we have to do is give them some weapons and some money. 15% of the American military budget, 15% of 1 year of the American military budget is all we have spent in Ukraine. Guys, I'm not saying 15% a year, 15% of 1 year, that's it for the last 2.5 years. That's all we spent in Ukraine. And that 15% of 1 year of the American military budget has destroyed the Russian military, has caused 500,000 Russian casualties, has destroyed the Russian tanks, has destroyed the Russian artillery, has set the Russians back years. They're still a threat to Europe, but I got news for you. Russia is a much less threat to Europe and to America now than they were 3 years ago because we funded the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians kicked their collective butts. So, yeah, we don't have to fight in Ukraine because the Ukrainians are fighting for us. And the best part is our enemy, which frankly, Russia and China are our enemies. I mean, TikTok, our moderators may not like that phrase, but it's kind of geopolitics 101. America's sort of top two enemies are Russia, China, our competitors, whatever you want to call them. The reason we have an $850 billion defense budget is because of Russia and China. Terrorism too, other stuff, but mostly Russia and China. So if we can spend 15% of 1 year's defense budget and destroy the Russian military and not have to risk a single American life, thank you, Pedro, I say, attaboy. So that's the reason like I said, occasionally I like to respond to the trolls because the trolls will bring up talking points that on its face sound kind of nice. But in the end, like they sound kind of like, oh yeah, we're risking American lives until you sit there and go, wait a minute, we're not risking any American lives. We're literally risking no American lives. Thank you, Maddie. And by the way, NH Life is another troll. He's admitting it's a proxy war. I'm happy to admit it's a proxy war. Are you kidding? Are you kidding? I am intentionally spending American tax dollars to destroy the Russian military. Are you kidding me? Duh. That guy's a Russian troll, by the way. Get rid of him. But you are a troll. You guys are total trolls. I love this stuff. That is a Putin talking point. By the way, it's another Russian talking point. Again, it's important to refute this stuff because we get different people each day on the show and they need to know this stuff. It's a proxy war. And they say it like they're spitting it at you or something. Thank you, Annie. I would say Love Academy. It's not Love Academy. Future Encounters. Thank you, Chris Cross, for the rose. And they love to go, it's a proxy war. Thank you, Charles. And what they mean is, thank you, Chris, for the gift as well. What they mean, and Danique, what they mean is, oh, it's actually the Americans fighting the Russians. Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Really? You just figured that out? Like, you figured out that America's fighting Russia and Ukraine? Hello, that's a flower lady. What the hell was that? Wow, that was very cool. That may be one you did the other day. I remember there was a whale that was different. In any case, that was very cool. Thank you for that. I'm going to try to remember after the show to grab it because I remember I told you TikTok grabs the really cool gifts and gives me little like 15-second segments of it. And I can go listen to the sound too. So I'll put it up after the show. Thank you for that. So yeah, that's another thing the Russians try to do is go, it's really a war between America and Russia and Ukraine. And they say it as though they're somehow like exposing us. And we're going to go, oh no, I'm happy to admit it. Are you kidding? I mean, guys, our weapons have caused 500,000 Russian casualties. Our weapons have destroyed the Russian military, right? Our sanctions have destroyed the Russian economy. Our government and our collective governments have set the evil hegemonic Russian dictatorship back years in terms of the threats it could pose to Europe. Proud and present and accounted for. I just love that crap though when they say that stuff. It's a proxy war. Yeah, and guess what? We're winning. And by the way, it's not even really a proxy war. If this were a war between America and Russia, Russia wouldn't exist anymore. Russia would lose a war, not just with America, actually, not just with NATO. With NATO overall, Russia would lose. But against America, can you imagine the Russians fighting the U.S. Air Force? You want to laugh? Within a week, our Air Force would destroy them. The U.S. Navy? The U.S. Marines? U.S. Special Forces against the Russians? These guys are stealing toilets, right? These guys literally went to Russia and stole, or to Ukraine and stole toilets. That's how bad their military is, right? They're kidnapping children. The Russians are facing war crimes investigations for kidnapping children, their soldiers do. The Russian soldiers are killing each other. There's video this weekend of Russian soldiers killing each other, right? Thank you, Pam Pam. So, yeah, they're not fighting us in any case. Mundashi, are contractors American? If attacked, would it be an attack on Americans? No. I don't think so. What I mean is, let me rephrase this. U.S. contractors in Ukraine would be Americans. It would not be the same thing as U.S. military. I'm just saying, like, my gut sense would be if they were killed, we wouldn't like it because they're Americans, but we would also say they're Americans who assumed the risk of going over there. Typically, they get paid like $250,000 or $300,000 a year. I know the ones in Iraq, like I knew people, they were getting $300,000 a year in Iraq 20 years ago. Now, dangerous, but it was good money if you could get it, right? I do not see the U.S. treating a military contractor being killed, a private citizen, as though you just attacked the U.S. military. I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so. So good question, though, because it is one of those weird gray zones, right? But I don't think so. But you could make huge money. I mean, huge money. Trust me. I even thought about it with Iraq. I got to tell you, I didn't want to get myself killed and wasn't thrilled with the Iraq war anyway, to be honest. But you heard about people making that kind of money and you were like, my God, 20 years ago, making $300,000 a year. My God. But you had to risk your life. And, it wasn't exactly the most just war. The one we did, the second war in Iraq, first war in Iraq, great war. Saddam Hussein got his ass kicked for trying to wipe out Kuwait. That was a just war. And by the way, America went with a coalition of 90 other countries. Thank you, Tracy. And we saved an Arab country. We saved a Muslim country. You're welcome. But the second one, not so good. All right, let's keep going here. 3. International Criminal Court. Speaking of war crimes, the International Criminal Court today issued more arrest warrants for Russians, this time for the former Russian defense minister and the former Russian chief of staff. So that would be Defense Minister Shoigu and the chief of staff, Gerasimov. Gerasimov's the one that people thought got killed in Crimea. I don't think he got killed. But they just got arrest warrants issued for basically going after Ukrainian civilian infrastructure. As you guys know, from the beginning of the war, the Russians have been trying to take out Ukrainian power, and they've been going after the power supply. Their intent was to starve and freeze to death Ukrainian citizens. This is a typical Russian tactic. The Russians, and we knew this going into the war. Anybody who studies Russian power knows, Russian power meaning Russian military, the Russians go after civilians. They don't go after civilians accidentally. They don't go after civilians negligently. So it's not like the Russians conduct war and say, we don't care if civilians die. That would still be bad. But that's not even what they do. The Russians go, let's kill civilians. That's what the Russian military does. They intentionally target civilians to kill civilians. They're not even going after military targets when they go after civilians. They literally say, let's blow up a civilian building for no reason otherwise, for absolutely no reason. It's actually different than Israel in many ways. I'm not going to defend Israel in terms of Netanyahu, but it gets a little bit different. A lot of what Netanyahu is doing is not caring about civilians. I will say that's still a problem if you don't care about civilians, and it's still a war crime. But literally targeting civilians is there's actually higher levels of evil than not caring about civilians. The Russians literally target civilians when there's nobody there, okay? I mean, at least in Israel's case, and don't get me defending Israel on this because I'm not going to defend Netanyahu, but he's bombing civilian areas because the terrorists are underground in the civilian areas. Now, you can criticize him and say, maybe you should care that there's civilians in the same area. Fair enough. But in the Russians' case, there's no terrorists there. There's no military there. They're literally bombing apartment buildings because they're trying to kill civilians. And it's important because this is one of the things where my show differs from a lot of other people. I have always demanded a higher level of intelligence and, frankly, accuracy or nuance from my audience and myself. These things matter. They matter in the law. They matter in ethics. Thank you, James. And again, not going to defend Israel, but I get a little annoyed when people make comparisons because what Israel's doing is bad in some ways, but what Russia's doing, the reason I don't like it is because not to get Israel off the hook, but I feel like you're getting Russia off the hook, right? Because part of the problem with, if you compare it to Israel, is Israel's got a point. Russia doesn't have a point, right? In the whole Middle East thing, and I mean, we can get into this, I don't like talking about the Middle East because honestly, people are idiots. People on both sides are idiots. They're not mature enough to have a discussion about the Middle East, right? Thank you, as a Christian, Steve. They're not mature enough to have a discussion without turning into morons when you talk about the Middle East. But Israel's got a point. The Palestinians got a point. The battle goes back 75 years, both sides killing each other. They both got a point. With Russia and Ukraine, both sides do not have a point, right? The Ukrainians haven't been committing acts of terror. The entire thing has been Russians attacking Ukrainians. It has not been, well, the Ukrainians did a terrorist attack and the Russians went back and the Ukrainians did another terrorist attack and the Russians, Ukraine and Russia, it's literally Russia did this and this and this and this and this and this and this. And the Ukrainians never fought back in any way. Not never fought back, but basically never fought back. So anyway, that's why I don't like the comparisons with Israel, because I think you're letting Russia off the hook, because the Middle East situation goes back a long time and it is very gray and very complicated. With Russia and Ukraine, it's not gray and complicated. Russia has a very long history of subjugating its neighbors. They did it to Eastern Europe in World War II. After they collaborated with the Nazis and helped start World War II, they took half of Europe hostage for 45 years. They took a whole bunch of other countries hostage as part of the Soviet Union, the Baltic states, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Ukraine, right? Then they took Eastern European hostage, Poland, Romania, Hungary, Czechoslovakia, East Germany, took them hostage. There is nothing even vaguely like gray or confusing or complicated about the history of Russia and Europe. They have been oppressors the entire freaking time. Okay, enough of Russia. I mean, not enough of Russia, but enough of that discussion. All right. So yes, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants for the top Russian officials. Again, will they get them? Who knows? But still good though. Still good. Why not? You know what I mean? So still not a bad thing. All right, next here, the Czech. Oh, this was good. So you remember how the Czech government has been trying to get artillery shells for the Ukrainians? The first installment of artillery shells have arrived in Ukraine. Basically, the Ukrainians don't have enough artillery. The Russians have a lot. Also, the Russians are producing a lot more than NATO. I don't know if it's like I forget the number, whether it was 3 times the amount of what NATO produces, something like that the Russians produce. And the Russians are getting a lot of artillery shells from North Korea. Thank you, Martin, for the gift. A lot of the North Korean shells don't work, but still, right? I mean, they exist. Even if half I think it's 3, wasn't it 3, Alex? I think so. Even if half the North Korean shells don't work, that could be 2.5 million shells that do work, right? So it's a lot of shells. Excuse me, burping while I talk to you here. So the Czech government went around and basically looked and found a bunch of artillery shells on the open market worldwide. We think a lot in Africa, maybe Latin America, hard to know where, and raised some money from the European governments to buy them. Now, from last I've read, it's a little confusing here. From last I've read, they don't seem to have gotten enough money yet to pay for all 1.5 million shells. They need something like $2 or $2.5 billion, I think, to pay for all of them. It looks like they've got half the money coming already, but nonetheless, the shells have started to arrive, which is good. A little bit more here. Denmark will stop training Ukrainian F-16 pilots by the end of the year as the country transitions to operating F-35 fighter jets. I thought that was a little weird. Like, it just sounded a little weird to me. Like, okay, Denmark is switching to flying F-35 fighter jets, which are the newer American fighter jets. That means you can't train Ukrainians on F-16s. You already know how to fly F-16s. You've already got the equipment to train them on F-16s. What's the problem? Now, the only thing I can figure is, do they just have enough equipment and they need the equipment to train their pilots on F-35s? And maybe that's what's going on. I'm not like they're going to reprogram it for F-35s instead. I'm just, there's something more to this story that isn't clear. Like why would the Danes not be able to train the Ukrainians anymore? Just anyway, not sure what's going on with that. What what was this? Oh, yeah. U.S., according to the Associated Press, the U.S. is expected to announce Tuesday it is sending an additional $150 million in weapons to Ukraine. The upcoming shipment is expected to include munitions for the HIMARS system, in other words, like rockets or whatever for it, missiles. The package also includes anti-armor weapons, small arms, and grenades, and highly sought-after 155 millimeter and 105 millimeter artillery shells. That's really good. The artillery shells are the most important. Depends how many they're getting. Ukraine's military intelligence says it set fire to an ammunition depot in Russia's Voronezh Oblast. Operatives reportedly set fire to a depot 70 kilometers or 43 miles from the border with Ukraine. The fire resulted in an explosion. Oh, and finally, senior Russian foreign ministry official threatened nuclear war again. You know, I'm not going to tell you his name. I'm not even going to tell you what he said. I don't care. I think literally from now on, I may just tell you guys every time a Russian threatens nuclear war so we can all have a drink and say, who cares? Same argument as before. I don't care. Actually, even better argument than before. It's been a year and a half of Russia threatening nuclear war. Where's the nuclear war I was promised? Where is it? I've been promised nuclear war for a year and a half now. 3 times a week, the Russians have promised me a nuclear war. Where is it? Where is it? That would be 2.5 years, would be 125 weeks. 3 times a week would be 375. 375 nuclear wars I was promised at this point, and I haven't had one. I'm feeling cheated here. Guys, they're bluffing. I mean, they're bluffing. Because, and by the way, not only do we know the Russians are bluffing because they've promised us 375 nuclear wars and we haven't had one. I don't want one, to be honest, but nonetheless, there hasn't been one. But if the Russians used their nukes, we would use our nukes, and Russia would cease to exist as a country. End of story. I mean, I did a video on TikTok today about it. I will give an analogy again. You hate your neighbor. You've got lots of guns, and you say, I'm going to get my neighbor, right? And I'm going to take my gun and get him. But you know, if you fire at your neighbor's house, he's got enough guns that he's going to fire back. He's going to kill you, your spouse, and your children. And you know that's what's going to happen if you fire at your neighbor. Are you going to fire at your neighbor knowing that in response your neighbor is going to kill you and your entire family? I'm going to go on a limb here and say there isn't a single person here who would say, oh, I'd fire at my neighbor anyway because I'm mad at him. No, you wouldn't. If you knew that you were basically going to miss your neighbor, or you're just going to injure him, and then he was going to wipe out your entire family, including you, you would never fire at your neighbor. That's where the Russians aren't going to do it. And Zach, I totally disagree. Zach says they don't care. They do care. We should not underestimate the Russians. The Russians are not crazy. They're not nice people as far as the government, right? Their government is not nice. Their government is genocidal. That's why they're being indicted by the International Criminal Court, right? They commit war crimes. They don't have toilets. Yes, but they're not crazy. North Korean government, crazy. Thank you, Johnny. The North Korean government's absolutely crazy. Putin's not crazy, right? I mean, there is literally no way the Russian government sits there and goes, yeah, we could fire at the Americans. They have nuclear weapons, as do the Brits and the French, and they would fire back and wipe us out. But I'm crazy, so I think that would be cool, right? I mean, honestly, even Iran probably isn't that stupid, right? Because Iran's trying to get nuclear weapons too. Israel has nuclear weapons. If Iran were to use nuclear weapons against Israel, which I still would worry about, I still think even they know the Israelis would literally wipe them out if they did that. So yeah, it's not going to happen. But I just bring it up because, you know, if it's another day, it's the Russians once again threatening nuclear war. I mean, and as Sword for Justice says, they've been threatening it for 60 years, actually 70 years probably, right? Since 1950 or so. I mean, literally, it's like, or 75 years. When was the first Russian nuclear test? Probably 1950 or something, right? It's like, no, I know, but they're trying to make you nervous, Zach. That's the point. Actually, it's just making me nervous. That's the point. The whole point is to scare you. That's why Putin does this. Thank you, Johnny. They're hoping that people that don't know the facts enough, because they don't do this for a living, don't know enough to know that, oh yeah, if the Russians attacked us, we'd wipe them. Basically, actually, the other thing is they're hoping you know just enough to know that if the Russians attacked us, we'd attack them back, because that scares you even more. You go, oh my God, we'd attack back. It'd be a nuclear war. They want you to think that way, not think, well, because we would attack the Russians back if they nuked us, that's why the Russians would never nuke us. I don't want to say never, right? There's There's always a chance of something going crazy. But generally speaking, they don't want us to get to that next point where we go, well, yeah, it's called, and as people always point out when I bring this up, it's called mutually assured destruction. Ironically, it's called MAD doctrine. And it's the doctrine that America and Russia, and frankly, the Brits and the French, they have nukes too. We are mutually assured of destroying each other if the other guy used nukes first. If they use nukes first, we'll respond and destroy them. If we use nukes first, they'll respond and destroy us. We're mutually assured of destroying each other, and therefore we never will. Unless something crazy happens, we never will. All right, that is it for tonight. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. Let's talk about the rest of the show. Auctions. We've got 48 hours left on our auctions. Our auctions end Thursday night. We've got a lot of cool stuff from Ukraine. Basically, the auctions benefit me. They benefit Ukraine. Half the money gets sent back to Ukraine. Half the money is used for me. I do this for free. I do it for a living. This show I've been doing full time since the war broke out, and I use the auctions and your generous gifts to basically pay my bills. Among the things we've got this time, I've shown you before, probably the favorite item is this fake Lego knockoff. Thank you, Timothy. It is a Chinese-made, which makes me laugh, Lego knockoff from Ukraine of a Bayraktar. The Bayraktars are the really cool Turkish drones that the Ukrainians have used to just destroy the Russian military. Well, China, of all things, China, Russia's ally, has made a knockoff Bayraktar Lego honoring the Ukrainian military. ZSU is the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the symbol of Ukraine, the country of Ukraine here. Literally, the box is honoring the Bayraktar and its contribution to the Ukrainian military, which has been killing the Russian military. I mean, this is Russia's ally, and the Chinese are honoring the military destroying their ally. It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Oh, hey, Blackbird in Philippines. Good. We don't get enough Asians, I think, because the time. Well, that's true. It'd be 6:45 in the morning, I'm going to guess, in the Philippines probably. So thanks for joining us. Have your coffee. So anyway, we're auctioning this off. This is very fun. A couple other things. Cool Ukrainian bracelet. It's blue and yellow, which are the Ukrainian colors, and has a Ukrainian trident on it, which you can see. This comes from Ukraine. Some fun Ukrainian stamps. They're English and Ukrainian. War and Peace, Ukraine. They're all blue and yellow, which is Ukrainian. Well, all right. 3 other things. What the hell? I can show you a few other things. This is also really nice. This is a fridge magnet from the Ukrainian post office, but it is a fridge magnet honoring the Ukrainian troops that sank the Moskva. The Moskva is that ship in the background. It was the Russian flagship at the beginning of the war, and the Ukrainians sank it. This is the flagship. By the way, the guy there is giving the finger to the ship. This was an actual Ukrainian stamp, or it is an actual Ukrainian stamp. It's not the stamp, of course. This is a magnet on cardboard. But the stamp shows a Ukrainian soldier flipping off the Russian ship. This is the ship that the first day of the war went to Snake Island and told the Ukrainian troops, this is Russian warship, surrender. And the Ukrainians responded, and it was recorded. Like, we've all heard the recording. Ukrainians responded, Russian warship, go F yourself. The guys ended up getting captured. Most of them survived. They were released by the Russians finally. Well, 6 weeks after the Russians threatened the warship, the Ukrainians sank the ship. This ship was a very important ship to the Russians. This was the Russians' flagship, flagship of the fleet in the Black Sea. Like, they're the most important ship south of Ukraine. The Ukrainians sank it with their homemade cruise missile. So this is honoring that. So it's quite fun. Another fridge magnet that I got in Bali. I was in Asia about a month ago. I just like it because I like fridge magnets. Thank you, Marcy. It's thank you, Christian. It's a good size, as you can see next to my head. And I just think it's really pretty and kitschy because it's this sea, but it says, I love Bali. It's kind of two-dimensional a little bit there, but I just think it's really pretty. I thought it was sort of kitschy. And for anybody who collects fridge magnets, it's kind of fun. And finally, there have not been a lot of bids on this because clearly I'm into this more than everybody else. This is some sort of boutique soap from Singapore. It's very pretty. It's ginger. What is it? Ginger, tea tree, lemon. It is like, I could sit here and sniff this all day. It is absolutely beautiful. I got it in Singapore. It's very nice. It's, like I said, a boutique soap. And I like these things. It's the kind of stuff, like, I put these things in guest bathrooms, like a little dish in a guest bath that the guests can use. Anyway, I like this kind of stuff. What can I say? Somebody has bid on it, but anybody who wants to check it out, it's very nice too. You could go to Discord and do the bidding through Thursday night. Half the money goes to Ukraine, half the money goes to me. You can find Discord on TikTok. Go to my profile, click the Linktree link, that URL in my profile. It brings up a list of links. Top one is Discord. Go over. For you guys on YouTube, it's even easier. Go to the description of the show and just look for the Discord link. All right. Let's talk away, folks. All right. Here we are. So let's hang and talk. What's going on? Brett, I don't care. I mean, Brett says, what's my opinion of Russia changing their nuclear doctrine? Russia has threatened to change their nuclear doctrine is the first point. They haven't changed it. Now, this is all part of Russia's, oh my God, we're going to nuke you. So it's so ridiculous. Putin is claiming that he really would like to nuke us. But Russian law won't let him. And being the powerless man Putin is, he just can't use nukes when he wants to, because Russia being a nation of laws that it is, Putin just doesn't have power. So they're thinking, by the way, maybe, they didn't say they are, maybe they're going to change their nuclear doctrine to make it easier for Putin to use nukes. Okay, as I said, first of all, the notion that Vladimir Putin is powerless and just can't use nuclear weapons to defend poor Russia because the law says no, and Putin, he's a man of the law. Give me a break, right? Give me a break. So that's the first thing. They're lying, and they're always lying. They're lying. Second of all, who cares, right? Again, Putin's gonna use nukes if he wants to use nukes. He's not like, oh, he was going to use nukes last week, but Russian law said, you better not, Vlad. And he said, oh, gosh, okay, right? The judge came to Putin and said, don't you dare, right? So it doesn't even matter if they change it, because it's not like they're going to use the nukes. But that's all it is they're talking about maybe they need to change the rules they have in place for when they use nukes to make it easier to use them. Guys, they're doing it. This is what we talked about earlier. They're doing it to freak you out. Every time the Russians mention nuclear weapons, an angel gets its wings or loses its wings or whatever, right? They want what they want. And frankly, we're doing it now, having the discussion. They want us having a discussion about nuclear weapons because per se, discussing nuclear weapons is scary. That's it. So whenever we discuss nuclear weapons, they win. They want people to be going, well, we had a discussion about nuclear war last night. Even if the discussion about nuclear war was, it's absurd. It's never going to happen. It was a discussion about nuclear war, and that's scary. So that's what's going on. The Russians are losing in Ukraine. Ukraine's not winning either, frankly, but Russia's in so much trouble in Ukraine. They're stuck in Ukraine. They're freaking out. Their economy isn't doing well. They've lost 500,000 men. That doesn't consider the 1 million men who fled the country in fear when the draft broke out in Russia, basically. But they've lost 500,000 men, casualties, and they're desperate to get us to stop supporting Ukraine. Thank you, MJ. And one of the ways they're doing it is constantly talking about nuclear war, hoping they freak out Biden, hoping they freak out Trump, hoping they freak out the French and the Germans, hoping they freak out you, so that everyone goes, oh, we've got it. And by the way, David Sachs just did it again. Elon Musk's little billionaire buddy did it again. He interviewed Donald Trump a couple days ago. Trump said more stupid things about defunding Ukraine. And Sachs, what did he say? He said, oh, this funding of the war in Ukraine, we're going to have World War III, right? If we don't defund Ukraine, we're going to have nuclear war. That is the Russian talking point. So that's it. Sachs is a clown, yes. That's it. So, yeah. The elections in Ukraine are not coming along, Shoeless, because you might have heard that they got invaded by a genocidal hegemonic neighbor trying to wipe them out. They can't have elections because the Russians invaded. That's what happens when a foreign country comes in and steals 18% of your land and forces millions of your people to flee the country. Under the Ukrainian constitution, they're under martial law because the Russians came in and tried to kill them all. They can't have elections. Ukrainian parliament would have to change the constitution. They're not allowed to. So, by the way, that's another Russian troll talking point, which I really like. Russia, a dictatorship, where Putin just had the most fake elections on the planet, where Putin, in the elections last year, Putin won 87% of the vote. And you got to laugh because only in places that are dictatorships do they think, hey, okay, 99% victory would sound fake. Let's make it 87% because that sounds real, right? Because again, in a place that's not a democracy, they think, oh, 87% sounds real, right? Because you're like, no, 87% does not sound real. That doesn't happen anywhere. That doesn't happen anywhere, right? This doesn't happen. So yeah. But it's a Russian talking point now to say Ukraine's not a democracy. They're not having weapons while we're trying to commit genocide and wipe them out. Well, Russia, you didn't have weapons either. So congratulations. Oh, you know, weapons. You didn't have elections either. But in Ukraine's case, they've got an excuse because Russia's freaking trying to kill them. And by the way, they just did a poll of the Ukrainian people. The Ukrainian people also do not want elections till the war is over, they've said. They may want to replace Zelensky eventually, but they literally had a poll like a week ago, and it showed overwhelmingly the Ukrainian people said, no. Let's wait until the war is over. This is not, because also the Ukrainians are a little freaked out too. They don't want to, oops, lost my screen here. Hello, there we go. They don't want to have like a big change in government in the middle of a, genocidal war, right? Because you're a little, you kind of want stability. So anyway. My ice cold water making me feel good again. Oh, hey, user 385, NAFO rules. I finally changed my profile on TikTok, on Twitter, I think. I had my NAFO. I've got my dog and me as little NAFO warrior, as little Greek fighters from, ancient Greece, which is very fun. Yeah, that doesn't make sense, Danny. That's not English. Danny, the Russian troll, come back, speak English next time, and then we'll talk. Anyway. Chayochki. What's chayochki? Ivanka, I don't know what chayochki. Let me try to translate and see if it tells me what that means. Chayochki. Hey. Hi? Okay. I'm not sure what that means, though, in that case, but okay. Anyway. Is that true? Mike says Britain had no elections from 1939 until 1945. Is that true? Did Britain suspend like the parliamentary elections and stuff during World War II? I don't even know that. Is that true? Interesting. Wow. I did not. I mean, I'm assuming since Mike said it, it's true, but that's very interesting. Wow. Okay. Did not know that. I'll have to Google that. That's very interesting. Who's winning the war in Ukraine? It's a tie right now. Both countries are kind of stuck. Thank you, Kronos, for the gift. Keep the gifts coming on TikTok, guys, and YouTube. Thank you. What's going on with Crimea? Not much, other than the Ukrainians keep blowing up Russian radar and stuff, making Crimea weaker and weaker, harder for the Russians to defend. Crimea is the Ukrainian territory the Russians stole in 2014. Nope. I do not think Russia will attack the U.S. because A, they would lose, and B, we would nuke them. And they wouldn't dare. So that's it. Yeah. You guys, you got to keep in mind, every time you worry about Russia, we've got as many weapons as they do. And actually, our military is better than theirs. Thank you, Christine. That's actually the most important part. Thank you, Dimitri. Neither the Russians nor us are going to use nuclear weapons because we both have nuclear weapons, right? If we use it, they use it. If they use it, we use it, and we all die. So the irony of nuclear weapons is, thank you, Ginger, is that neither of us can really use them. So then you have to rely on conventional weapons. Conventional weapons mean weapons that aren't nuclear, right? Fighter jets, bombers, bombs, but bombs that aren't nuclear bombs, right? Cruise missiles that aren't nuclear. Well, guess who's got better and more of those? Us, right? U.S. Air Force will destroy the Russian Air Force. U.S. Navy will destroy the Russian Navy, right? So yeah, I'm not worried at all about the Russians being near America, because if they started a war, we would destroy them, Oh, hey, Aino from Finland. You're not worried about Russia? That's because you guys kicked their ass before, and you're NATO members now. Double reason not to worry about Russia. Putin does care if Russia's nuked. That's the only thing. I was around Barstow says, what if Putin doesn't care if Russia's nuked? But he does care. He's not crazy. Also, Putin has repeatedly said, thank you, whoever just bought some subscriptions for folks there. Who just bought the subscriptions, just so I know. Make sure you tell me, folks. Somebody bought multiple subscriptions on TikTok. Gifts for people. Thank you. That was very sweet of you. Joe did. Okay. Thank you, Joe. Sorry. And then I forgot I was going to respond to, Putin. Putin has repeatedly said he thinks he's like Peter the Great. Putin thinks he's like one of the great Russian czars, the dictators from the past who united Russia and grew Russia. And I think he stole land from the Swedes and created St. Petersburg, right? But the idea is, he's repeatedly said this in speeches, he thinks he's the guy who's going to save Russia, who's going to add to Russian territory and make it greater. Dog wants water again. Okay, 1 second, dog. If you're the guy that instead of making Russia greater and bigger is the guy that got Russia nuked and killed 99% of the Russian population in a nuclear war, I am going to suggest that that does not make you Peter the Great. That makes you Vlad the loser. He does not want to be Vlad the loser. So yeah, he cares. There's zero reason to think that Putin doesn't care if his entire country, including his daughters, get wiped out in a nuclear war. Zero reason to think he doesn't. Stop. All right. Oops. And I'm back. And I'm back. And I'm back. All right. I love when the trolls, by the way, comment on TikTok, because by commenting, they're telling the algorithm that the show is interesting. I love when they do that. This guy again, and then they type it out, and TikTok's algorithm goes, "Oh, somebody likes the show." I don't know if gas was part of the reason Putin invaded. That I don't know. I mean, overall, he invaded because the Russians don't believe Ukraine is an independent country, and they want the Soviet Union back. That's it. They want the country. They want the old band back together, which means, thank you, Mike, Marine Mike. They want the old band back together. They want to basically kidnap all the countries they kidnapped before, part of the Soviet Union, and kidnap the Europeans they kidnapped before. Oh, hey, Ray in Phoenix. Good to see you. You're done, dog. Is China still invading Taiwan? Someday. Not anytime soon, we hope. We do worry 2 to 4 years from now. Old TVO commercial? I don't know. Oh, maybe Storm. Yeah, it's a Keith Haring. It's a Keith Haring t-shirt from Uniqlo. And I think it's meant to be like world come together, less pornographic than much of Keith Haring's work. It always kind of makes me laugh. I do make a mean moussaka. Actually, I make a very good moussaka. And my nephew has sort of an even upgraded version my mom didn't like, but his was very good. Hey, that's enough. No. The dog is now begging for, when I went to give her water, her food thing fell on the floor, but it didn't open, and she heard it. So now she's like, I want more food, even though she ate 2 hours ago. That's my girl. She's on a diet, but she's lost weight. She's almost at her good weight again, not her skinny weight, but her good weight. So I may be able to slowly increase her food again now. Anyway, eggplant. Your moussaka should be eggplant based. That is the traditional way to make it. Yes, at least Greek moussaka. Yeah, Luis, it's very good. Anyway, what else we got, guys? China is still committing active aggression in the Taiwan Strait. Oh yeah, and they're also committing active aggression against the Philippines and Vietnam. You name it. You name it. Thank you, NAR, for the hands. How many allies does Russia have? Not a lot, and they're kind of bad allies. I mean, China. But China is still kind of a weird ally because China doesn't want to help totally, but they kind of want to help, but they want to pretend like they're this independent, objective, developing country. And at the same time, they're a hegemonic communist dictatorship that is totally supporting the other hegemonic dictatorship, Russia. But otherwise, Russia's got Belarus, North Korea, the worst country on the planet. Belarus, joke. I mean, as far as the military and all of that economy goes. Syria, joke. Libya, joke. Cuba, joke. Venezuela, joke. No offense, Venezuelans, but your government's a joke. I would love to go to China. I was going to go to China when I was working on Capitol Hill, and the trip didn't work out. Would love to go to China. Not right now, because apparently they're kidnapping Americans. So the State Department has warned Americans not to go to China, which is too bad. But at some point, I would love to go to China. Yeah. Very interested in going. And my nephew's new wife is, she's Singaporean. Singapore, not China. But her ancestors come from China. She has family there, which would be really fun. So I'd love to go with her at some point and be able to meet the ancestors and, bring Google Translate and see if it works. We'll see. But it would be very fun to go. So anyway. What else is going on? What else, people? If you had $1 billion, you'd buy an island. Is Saudi Arabia a threat? Saudi Arabia, they're not a threat. They're problematic because they're a nasty dictatorship too. You see, you got it done. They're a nasty dictatorship as well. A nasty, violent, just nasty government, Saudi Arabia. Threat. I don't know if I'd call them a threat, but they're kind of horrific government that unfortunately we have to deal with because they control oil. Otherwise, it'd be nice if they didn't exist. The government, that is. People are fine, but their government's pretty horrific. I mean, they literally murder journalists and stuff like the Russians do. Of course, the Saudis murder journalists in a specific way, in a specifically awful way. Remember, they kidnapped that where was he from? I guess he was Saudi, right? But a journalist working here in America for the Washington Post kidnapped him at their embassy or their consulate in Turkey and dismembered the guy. I mean, literally cut him to pieces inside the consulate where they tricked him to come in. I mean, horrific. I mean, like literally serial killer Khashoggi, exactly, who was the guy, like serial killer kind of stuff, what they did, Russian food, I mean, when I was in the Soviet Union, the food was really bad. Actually, when I was in Russia, the food was bad too. I was in the Russian Far East, the food was bad. The Soviet Union was really bad. Kind of hard to say. I mean, Soviet Union times, the economy was so bad. Even when I was there in the Russian Far East, you get something in Russia called mystery meat. We call it mystery meat because it's like you never quite know what animal this meat came from. I was going to say borscht is good, but borscht is Ukrainian anyway, right? I'm sure Russian food can be good, but the caviar, even though the caviar was cheap, we had very good caviar when we were in Russia. You get sort of caviar and cheap champagne, even though the champagne's super sweet. Caviar and cheap champagne is still very fun. Anyway, Google Translate worked well when visiting Japan. It's so much fun to be able to do that. I did use Google Translate a little bit in Bali and Indonesia. It wasn't perfect, but we were able to sort of get our point across, which was nice. Kind of amazing. I mean, because I've traveled when I was in Japan 30 years ago, and I literally had to learn Japanese to get around in Japan. And I mean, I taught myself Japanese, so it wasn't like I knew a lot of Japanese. I knew enough that some other people on the trip were pissed. I remember this one girl was like jealous, and a friend of mine told me she got all pissed and was like, he actually learned Japanese for the trip. And it was like, okay, that wasn't really a reason to be pissed at me. If anything, you could have thanked me or been proud of me. But I learned enough. I had to learn enough Japanese to get around, because in Japan, I don't know about today, 30 years ago, you couldn't use a taxi without speaking Japanese. It was restaurants, impossible. Restaurants, I still had a hard time. I ordered things in restaurants I will never order again in Japan. But to have Google Translate, oh my God. It's still not easy because you're still trying to do the back and forth thing that people aren't really sure of. Oh, I'm following the Julian Assange thing. He should have rotted in jail for the rest of his life. Thank you, Mundashi. But I followed it. Oh, yeah. I followed it. I mean, legally, he got a sufficient punishment because the number of years he's been in jail would be the number of years he'd be in jail anyway. So I accept that. But I think he's human scum. And I'd be fine with him having to look over his shoulder the rest of his life, being afraid of the CIA sending him to Gitmo, as far as I'm concerned. So, oh, that's interesting. You went to Ukraine, you used Google Translate. How fun. Hey, Super Hornet. Now, I will say this. Yeah, if he were a journalist, it'd be nice, but Julian Assange isn't a journalist. He's a pro-Trump activist. Julian Assange did everything he did in order to get Donald Trump elected. Julian Assange, by the way, is the reason we all know about Donald Trump. He's the reason Donald Trump became president. He said his goal was to make Hillary Clinton lose the election and get Donald Trump elected. That's what Julian Assange is. Final point here, Julian Assange is not a journalist. You know what journalists do? Journalists get classified information and they take out the names of the innocent people so they don't get assassinated. You know what Julian Assange did? He left in the names of everybody around the world who has ever helped the U.S. government. Those people got killed as a result of Julian Assange leaving those names in. No journalist anywhere. And talk to the journalist. I just watched a whole show on this. Journalists would absolutely positively remove the names of innocent people who would have been murdered when their names went public. Julian Assange was happy to put those names public and get them killed because he's one of those far lefties that go so far left that he's far right. He's one of them. And again, Julian Assange is the reason you've got Donald Trump as president and the reason all of you in the whole freaking world have to worry about Donald Trump because of that idiot Julian Assange. So yeah, Julian Assange can rot in hell for all I care. And I hope he spends the rest of his life worrying about the CIA picking him up because there's a decent chance the Brits or the Americans may still go after him, I think. I hope they do, but who knows? Anyway, that's what I think of Julian Assange. He's a pig. He's a pig. He's certainly not a journalist. Tokyo had English everywhere for menus. That's good. They didn't. I was there 30 years ago, though, and they didn't back then. That's good they do now. That's good they do now. It was very hard. It was very, you go into restaurants and literally you'd look at the menus, go, I don't know what this is. You'd look at the pictures and go, eh. And all I know is like, well, I hate like in Japanese restaurants. It's funny, actually. We have raw sushi in the States, but it's different. It's totally different. So like raw sushi in the States is good, but we have salmon and tuna and other stuff. It's very good. Raw sushi in Japan was disgusting. I had raw squid, disgusting. I love squid, but cooked. Raw squid, disgusting. Raw shrimp, vile, absolutely vile. Now, I will say this. Asians like disgusting texture, gooey food compared to Americans. Thank you, Huganute. My nephew today sent me, I wish I wasn't using my camera for the show. I would send you. Anthony is in Malaysia. They're in some town called Georgetown, I think, in Malaysia, if anybody knows Malaysia. And he showed me the dessert. He goes, it was delicious, but I had this phrase I used in Singapore for a lot of the food, not a lot, but some of the food we tried. It's disgusting, but it's delicious. There was a couple different dishes we had that were just disgusting, but delicious. He got this dessert that was like noodles, beans, some kind of a curd that was almost like a creme brulee, but it was wet and gooey mixed with noodles and black beans. And he said it was disgusting, but it was delicious because like the texture was just like eating worms and wet worms and beans and creme brulee. Oh God. But that's an Asian thing, clearly. No, there is clearly textures in Asian food that as Americans we would go, ugh, but it's a different texture which I never even thought of it, that it's a texture that we don't have or that we don't do. We don't do sort of gooey, slimy. Even calling it that is rude, but you know what I mean? They clearly do love it, vlogger. I mean, absolutely. Yeah. It is, like I said, gooey, slimy is all I could call it. It was gross. It was gross. But yeah, the thing in Singapore, God, I'm trying to remember. It was like a, God, I got a picture of it. Almost like if you took, it wasn't rice, bean curd, maybe a little sweet, cooked in almost like a dish. So it was like a mold that was unmolded. And I want to say maybe sweet bean curd. It was delicious and it was disgusting. We got it at like the hawker markets in Singapore. So I can say it was delicious and disgusting because it was like eating a raw jellyfish, but it was really good, but a really good raw jellyfish, which, you know, oh God, oh my. Anyway, glutinous sticky rice. Yeah. Although sticky rice, I would imagine maybe wouldn't be as bad. I don't know, but I'm sure they're popular in Asia. Safiam. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's clearly just a different, squidgy. That's a good name for it, Mama. Squidgy. Yeah. Squidgy. I don't know if Kilroy asked a good question. What do you think would happen if Putin were assassinated? The problem is we don't know. You know, one of the things they sort of teach you in international relations is, I mean, I don't want to, it sounds facetious to even say, you don't necessarily want to take out like assassinations are not always good things. Now, obviously, work with me here. Let me finish the sentence, okay? Because you need to know who you're getting next. You don't just take out foreign leaders. This was part of the problem with Bush moving into Iraq the second time. A, he lied. That was a big problem. But B, taking out Saddam Hussein was very dangerous because you don't know who's coming next. You don't just take out a dictator hoping that who comes next is better, because maybe he's not better. Maybe he's the same. Maybe he's worse. Maybe you've opened up a can of worms and the country starts to fall apart. Right. One of the concerns in Iraq was that the country was going to break into like 3 sections. And I'm trying to remember exactly, but one might have been like Shiite in the east, closer to Iran, that Iran was going to grab onto. One of them, I think, might have been, probably was Kurd in the northwest, that the Kurds might grab Turkey. And the other might have been Sunni or whatever. I don't know, whether it's Jordan or whatever it is. But the idea was that exactly what PC Noel said, power vacuum, that the dictator is holding a very weak country together. And once the dictator goes, the country falls apart. Okay, Russia. You could say maybe that's a good thing in Russia, right? Russia's a nasty country internationally, hegemonic dictatorship. We don't like that. Maybe it would be better to have a weaker Russia. Yes, but they have nuclear weapons. And a lot of those weapons are spread around. And you always run the risk when a nuclear country falls apart of those weapons either going to terrorists or anybody else, right? This was the concern when the Soviet Union fell apart. I mean, George Bush's father, the first President Bush, only had 4 years as president, but had an amazing presidency. I mean, he really did. He oversaw the dissolution of the Soviet Union, and it went well. It might not have gone well, right? Because Ukraine had nukes. I think Belarus had nukes too. I'm trying to think if anybody else. I don't remember if any of the former. Does anybody know? Did any of the other former Soviet republics have nukes? I want to say Belarus, Ukraine, and Russia, of course. But did anybody else? I don't know if anybody remembers. Very dangerous, right? Very dangerous. I do not practice law. No, I have not. Kazakhstan had nukes. Okay. So that's the risk. Thank you, Iggy. We don't know if the next person would be better than Putin. It could be worse, and we don't know whether Russia would fall apart and there could be a nuclear war or something else if they did. That all of a sudden terrorists get their hands on nukes. I don't know, something, right? So you always kind of want to worry about that. Thank you, Family Lavery, for the TikTok gift. Oh, we wouldn't have a choice, Vlogger. Vlogger asks, would we go to war if China attacks Taiwan and Russia hits NATO? We wouldn't have a choice. We'd have to, and we would. If China attacked Taiwan, we go to war. I've not written books. Nope. If China attacks Taiwan, we go to war. And if Russia attacks NATO, we'll go to war. And if it has to be 2 wars, you know what? America fought 2 wars. I mean, it still kind of boggles my mind when I think back to World War II. I had watched a bunch of the movies about World War II in the Pacific. I'm trying to forget, but you guys know what I mean. Those TV series that were really good. It wasn't Band of Brothers. Maybe it was. There was like the one, and then they did the sequel years later about the Pacific. And it's really interesting to watch them because you really get a sense of how horrific. Was it called the Pacific? I'm forgetting now. How horrific that war was and what an outsized role the Americans had. I mean, in Europe, we were fighting with all of you. In Asia, sure, there were more people than us, but it was us, right? And the fact that the Americans were able to fight Hitler and the Japanese at the same time, across Europe and across Asia, and I've got to look at how big Asia is too, is kind of amazing. Who knows if we can do it again now, right? I know the Brits were there and everything else too, of course, but you know what I'm saying though. Asia especially was just so outsized what we had to accomplish that we wouldn't have a choice. We'd have to do it again. That's what being the good guys is all about. Liververse sandwiches. Ugh. You can't support anyone for president? That's not true. I support Joe Biden. Donald Trump's horrific. Absolutely horrific on everything. He's a criminal. He's a convicted felon. He wants to take away my health insurance. He's the reason that women in this country, many women no longer have the right to an abortion. He wants to eliminate the Department of Education. He wants to eliminate NOAA, part of NASA. He wants to get rid of them because he doesn't like their weather forecast, because he thinks their weather forecasts are promoting global warming. Because they're so opposed to believing in global warming, they want to get rid of the government agency that does weather. I mean, this is how crazy this shit is, guys. They want to ban, I was watching about this today. They want to ban abortion medicine. That's part of Trump's agenda for next time, is to get rid of all the abortion medicine. Like anything that, any of the RU46, any of those kind of drugs and stuff. No, I mean, insane the crap this guy wants to do. In addition to, Donald Trump tried to take away my health insurance, and I will never forgive him for violently trying to overthrow the government. Thank you, Jenna. But he also literally tried to take away my health insurance. That son of a bitch got within 1 vote of killing my health insurance. And I can't get health insurance if that son of a bitch took away my Obamacare. Why? Not because I can't afford it. I can afford health insurance because I've had pre-existing conditions. And under the old law before Obamacare in my country, we just wouldn't give people insurance. And by the way, pre-existing conditions, guess what in other words, you're sick. We don't want to insure you. Guess what other kind of things under America before Obamacare that were considered, you're too sick, we're not going to give you insurance? Allergies, eczema, psoriasis, high blood pressure. Being a woman, that was my favorite. Being a woman was considered a pre-existing condition. Insurance companies would charge women more because, for example, women, they have babies. We need to charge them more than men, okay? I mean, horrific what healthcare used to be like in America before Obamacare. My health insurance, I had the best health insurance I could buy in Washington, D.C. as a self-employed person. And by the way, a lot of you are self-employed now, right? The gig economy. I had the best health insurance I could buy. Thank you, Christian. My health insurance covered $1,200 a year in prescription drugs, and that's it. Okay? Let me tell you how much prescription drugs cost in America. My asthma is now under control, thank God. But my asthma, I used to have to take asthma drugs. I used to take Advair. Americans know Advair. In Europe, it's called Seretide in French, Seretide, maybe some other names in Europe. Seretide in France will cost you 40 euros. Advair in America will cost you $350. 40 euros is basically $42. In America, you're going to pay $250 to $350 for that same drug. My health insurance would cover $1,200 a year. That was 4 months of my Advair that my insurance covered. And then, here's the best part. Thank you, Norway. My insurance said, we're not paying for any more prescriptions for the entire year until the next year starts. So I got 4 asthma drugs, 4 months of, by the way, I had multiple asthma drugs. Thank you, Norway Fox. I had multiple asthma drugs that I had to take every month. 1 asthma drug for 4 months is all they would cover. And that's it. I mean, that's how bad insurance was in America. You got cancer, kiss your ass goodbye. There was a famous American, well, I'm going to finish with this, but talking about healthcare in America, there was a famous American movie critic called Roger Ebert. Good guy, just loved by everybody. You know, he was one of the top 2 critics, along with Gene Siskel, for years, like decades in America. One of the top 2 guys doing movie reviews. He got oral cancer, right? Cancer in his mouth. He was lucky that he had insurance from 3 things. He had worked at 2 different newspapers, and I think as part of the union, he had insurance with one paper, insurance with the other. That stuck with him because he had a good contract. And I think he also taught at a university. So he had insurance between 3 different places. Guess what happened when he got oral cancer? And this, by the way, like one of the most successful writers in America. He wrote for one of the biggest newspapers in Chicago, was on all the TV stations. I mean, famous guy, okay? He, with his oral cancer, went through one insurance, and they finally said, you've spent too much money, no more insurance for the rest of your life. The second insurance, he used up all of his second insurance, and they said, you've used up too much cancer drugs, no more insurance for you. By the way, drugs and surgery, no more cancer treatment. He was on his 3rd insurance when he died. The only way this guy was able to keep, Roger Ebert, exactly. The only way this guy was able to pay for his cancer treatments, as one of the most famous American journalists out there who had the best jobs in the world, is because he had 3 different insurances from 3 different jobs. Otherwise, he would have never. People literally who would get lung cancer and their insurance would cut them off, because typically American insurance, and this is what Trump wants to get us back to, typically American insurance would give you like $2 million. They give you a certain amount of money per year. And once you spent that money, you get no more health coverage. You get no more medicine that year. That's the first thing. And of course, you know how expensive it is in America. Like I said, medicine in this country, forget it, right? Surgeries, forget it. My eye surgery in France was 2,000 euros. In America, they told me it would have been a minimum of $25,000. I had cataract surgery in America. My cataract surgery was $30,000. Because I had insurance, it cost me $2,000. I had to pay $2,000 out of pocket. That was good. That's because I had really good insurance, $2,000 out of pocket. Okay? That was good insurance because it was $30,000. Imagine just cataracts. If the insurance cut you off, would be $30,000 potentially. So no, that's what, and this, the reason we're talking about this is because somebody said, do I support Trump or Biden? Yeah, I support Biden. I support Biden because I follow this crap, and Donald Trump tried to take away my health insurance. And Donald Trump, if you're a woman, took away your right to choose, took away your right to an abortion. And by the way, if you're a guy, Donald Trump also took away your right to an abortion, because I got news for you. I don't know a lot of guys that want to have babies they don't want to have. And I think this is an argument people sort of forget to make, is that, yes, women are worried about their right to control their bodies, but guess what? Most men don't want to have a baby they don't want to have. And I think it's almost like impolitic to talk about it. Thank you, Running. It's almost like, for some reason, we feel bad, like men don't have a say. I think a lot of guys would be very upset if you told them, hey, you get a girl pregnant, guess what's going to happen under Donald Trump's America? You're going to have to marry her and have a baby. A lot of guys would be like, what the fuck? Even if you and the woman both decided you didn't want to keep, obviously you want to have the pregnancy. You still have to have it. Thank you, Alex, for the gift. So yeah, lots of reasons why this is a horrific election that's coming up, and it just pisses me off. Like I said, just horrific. No Ukraine update because we did that for the first like hour and 10 minutes of the show. Grumpy. What I will do is I will do a summary of the stories we covered today. Oh, Thailand definitely has cheaper medicine, Lola. Most of the entire world has cheaper medicine than we have in America. Thank you, Running. Thank you, Pam Pam. Just crazy. Yeah, poll says early diagnosis breast cancer, no chemo, radiation, or drugs, $500,000 bills if I hadn't had insurance. Wait, what do you mean no chemo, radiation, or drugs? How is it, just curious, but how is it a $500,000 bill without chemo, radiation, or drugs? What else is there? Just curious if you can put a little more there. But yeah, this was typical. People with cancer would spend $500,000, $1 million, $2 million. And once their insurance dried up, boom. Boom. Oh, surgery. Okay. Oh, you didn't have surgery down there. I see. Adverse down to $50 finally. That's good. It wasn't that way. I don't need it anymore, Justin. Thank God my asthma's under control. Wow. The surgery to remove your breast could be $500,000. Oh my God. No, it's crazy, guys. What was my sister telling me about oh God. Oh my God. Listen to what Obamacare also got rid of. Before Obamacare, this is the thing Trump and the MAGA Republicans want to kill. Before Obamacare, what Trump wants to get us back to, women in America had to get special codicils added on to their health insurance. So like we have private health insurance, right? They would have to buy an extra policy to cover pregnancy, like the baby. Or I think it wasn't just pregnant. It might have been pregnancy or certainly the birth, right? They had to get a special codicil to their insurance policy. But you weren't allowed to just buy one. You had to get the addition on your insurance policy 3 months or more before you're pregnant. If you find out you're pregnant and bought the addition to your insurance policy, they wouldn't cover your baby. So you had to basically get the insurance, not get pregnant, and then try to get pregnant. They wouldn't cover your pregnancy. That's how freaking bad. And my sister actually told me she was terrified because I think it was their first kid. They got pregnant and they were terrified because it was very close to that 3 month period. And they were really worried about whether or not it was within that 3 months. Crazy stuff. This is what America used to have. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah, women would pay more than men for insurance. I mean, everything about it is just, no, it is. And this is what pisses me off. Like, you know what? It's just people who, and the Europeans used to do this, but some American young people do this crap too. Oh, there's no difference between Biden and Trump. You're insane. You're insane if you think there's no difference between Biden and Trump. I mean, seriously, like, I don't even want to talk to you if you think there's no difference between Biden and Trump. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, at this point, come on. Anyway. All right. Yeah, there you go, Timothy. My friend paid support for 18 years for a child whose mom purposely got pregnant. Yeah. Now, mind you, she may have kept the baby anyway, right? In that case, but nonetheless, you've got families that don't want to keep, they don't want to have a baby. And on Donald Trump's America, they're going to have to. 20 states, by the way, since Donald Trump was president and got rid of the protections for abortion, 20 American states have outlawed pregnancy. 20 of 50 states have outlawed, pregnancy, have outlawed abortions. 20 of 50 American states, it's illegal now. Insane. Absolutely insane. All right. Let me tell you a quick summary here of the news, and then we'll go, guys. Today's day 852 of Putin's 3-day special military operation. Reuters reports that 2 key advisors to Trump have presented him with a plan to end Russia's war in Ukraine. If he wins the election, it involves telling Ukraine it will only get U.S. weapons if it enters peace talks. CNN reports that the Biden administration is moving towards lifting a de facto ban on American military contractors deploying to Ukraine. They would go there to maintain and repair U.S.-provided weapon systems, including F-16s. The International Criminal Court, according to the Associated Press, said Tuesday it has issued arrest warrants for Russia's former defense minister Shoigu and its military chief of staff Gerasimov for attacks on Ukraine's power plants, the third time the global court has accused senior Russian leaders of war crimes. European Court of Human Rights. I forgot to tell you this one. European Court of Human Rights finds Russia guilty of violating human rights in occupied Crimea. The decision stems from several complaints Ukraine brought to the court in the years following Russia's occupation of Crimea. The Czech prime minister confirms Ukraine received the first batch of shells under the Prague-led initiative to get Ukraine more artillery shells. Denmark will stop training Ukrainian F-16 pilots by the end of this year as the country transitions to operating American F-35 fighter jets. Associated Press reports the U.S. is expected to announce it is sending an additional $150 million in weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine's military intelligence says it set fire to ammunition depot in Russia's Voronezh Oblast. And finally, the Russians have threatened nuclear war again. And yet again, nobody quite cares about yet another Russian meaningless bluff because it's all they do. That is it, folks. All right. Well, that ended up being a nice polemical show. All right, guys. Good talking to you all. I am going to Costco under $2. I'd love to know how you manage that. I used to get mine at Costco for $2.50. Good for you. I'm glad that's what they charge now. But yeah, it used to be $2.50 was the cheapest you could get. Actually, no. The drug I needed was Advair 500. It was $3.50 was the cheapest you could get, and that was at Costco. I didn't even mention it was Costco. Those were Costco prices. Yeah. Anyway, all right, guys. Freddie Prinze Jr. I would accept that, Caitlin. Wow. I like that, assuming he's still hot. But Freddie Prinze Jr., although he did have like the hair was going gray, that dark guy with the gray hair thing. I'll take it. I'll take it, Caitlin. All right. Thank you, Thomas, for the gift. Thank you, guys. All right, guys, have a very good night. I will see you all tomorrow. The show is every Monday to Friday, 6 o'clock Eastern. Do make sure to follow me if you're on TikTok. Do make sure to follow me if you're on YouTube. Click that follow button and check out my videos. I do videos throughout the day on TikTok and YouTube. But then every night at 6 o'clock Eastern time, US. Frank Sinatra works too. I'll take it. I'll take it. All right, guys. You have a very good night. What the hell? Let's mute another. There, I was just going to say, you already got him, Callum. I was going to say, let's mute another troll just for fun. Here, just for fun. That was for that. Oops. Oh, I need a new battery. Uh-oh. All right. I just bought new batteries. Hopefully, well, I'm going to see if I've got a replacement for this. Otherwise, we're buying the Greek goat is silent. Dun, dun, dun. All right. When we finish the show, we're doing surgery on the Greek goat, and we're going to see what battery. It looks like it's a small battery there. I may have to buy a new one. It's a little battery there. Where's it made of? It's got to be made in China or Vietnam. Just for fun. Let's see where the goat is made, just for fun. Made in China, of course. China. Actually, I kind of like that the goat is made in China. China. So, all right, guys. I will talk to you. Well, you know you're doing it right when the goat runs out of batteries. That is exactly right, Christian. All right, guys, I will get this fixed. I will see you all tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern. The battery will cost more than the goat. Well, that's a good point. I should see what the battery costs, but I'm suspecting it's a little cheaper. I could just buy a new goat, but let's be frugal. All right, guys, have a good night. I will see you all tomorrow. Thank you. Go check out the auctions on Discord. We got 2 more nights. Dobra nić, Marie. All right, see you, YouTubers and TikTokers. See you all as well. All right. Give it a second for the video to catch up so I'm not just hanging up mid-sentence. We learned that one of the first shows. There we go. All right, YouTube. There we go. All right, TikTok. See